We need to get you started tonight with breaking news from Wisconsin Rapids.
Yeah, we can confirm multiple fire crews are on the scene of a fire at the Verso Paper Mill. It's on the Wisconsin River near West Riverview Expressway. We want to show you some pictures we got from viewers. One witness tells us he believes the entire roof of that massive structure is on fire right now. We have an update now on the fire at the Verso Paper Mill in Wisconsin Rapids.
News Channel 7's Brennan Scarborough just arrived at the scene. He joins us now live from Rapids. Brennan, tell us what you're seeing.
Well, Jeff, as you can see behind me, flashing lights all over the scene. I was told that the fire right now is mostly contained to the building.
And we're starting with breaking news. Guilty on all counts. That's the verdict from a jury in Minneapolis against Derek Chauvin in the death of George Floyd. You're now taking a live look at Minneapolis, where crowds continue to gather in response to the verdict at the George Floyd Memorial.
We begin tonight with some breaking news from the NBA. Because of the coronavirus outbreak, it is suspending its season until further notice. The league issued a press release just minutes ago saying the move will take effect at the end of tonight's scheduled games. The NBA also confirmed a player for the Utah Jazz, center Rudy Gobert, tested positive for COVID-19.
Protests in response to the death of George Floyd are taking place all over the country, including here in Wausau, where a Black Lives Matter protest was organized this afternoon. News Channel 7's Emerson Lehman was there and joins us live downtown. Emerson?
Well, Jeff, as you can see, the protest beginning to wind down a little bit. There's still some people out here with their signs showing support for the Black Lives Matter movement.
All is calm outside our nation's capital right now, but boy, you couldn't say that just a few hours ago when chaos broke out and Trump supporters broke through the doors and breached the Capitol. And after all that, Congress is back in session to count electoral votes for the 2020 presidential election.
After months of waiting, a Wisconsin prosecutor says he will not file criminal charges against any police officers involved in the Kenosha shooting of Jacob Blake. Blake was shot in the back in Kenosha last summer, leaving him paralyzed and setting off sometimes violent protests in the city.
It didn't take long for newly sworn in President Biden to get to work, already signing executive actions in the Oval Office. The new president has signed 15 executive actions and 2 agency actions targeting many of former President Trump's policies.
The cause of a massive fire at Gudman's Garage in Wausau over the weekend is still under investigation. More than 150 firefighters were used to put out that fire Saturday.
Well, we take a live look down on the Wausau 400 block, where yesterday the scene was a little bit different. Now snow is starting to roll in, and so is a first alert weather day for you. Take a live look now at conditions on the roads here in Wausau from our News Channel 7 Weather Shield. We'll bring in Chief Meteorologist Mark Holly now. And Mark, just taking a look at those roads there, what are we looking for as we get into the overnight and those temperatures drop?
Yeah. Now, speaking of covering your plants, if you want to skip the water, Mark is here to show us some ways to protect our greens with what we have at home. So, Mark, you brought a little friend with to demonstrate.
There's a Mountain Merit tomato plant for those plant people. You know that
they spotted it.
They spotted it. I don't know if you spotted it or not, but it's a Mountain Merit.
The sounds of frogs calling or croaking once the sun sets. Jeff Alexander explains why the DNR is looking for volunteers to carry on a Wisconsin spring tradition.
Now, live from across north central Wisconsin, News Channel 7 at 10 starts now.
Change could be coming to the amount of COVID-19 vaccine that children get. Why researchers think they could get a lower dose.
Another hot day across north central Wisconsin. The heat wave continues, but for how much longer? Details coming up.
Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo stops in Wisconsin. Only on 7, we have the one-on-one interview. Find out what he thinks about the upcoming summit between the U.S. and Russia.
But first, the movie theater business has many ups and downs during the pandemic. We'll talk with the Cosmo in Merrill about how they're staying afloat. The Cosmo Theater in Merrill has been experiencing a roller coaster of business impacts because of the pandemic.
And like many, they're hoping to bounce back as we slowly get out of the pandemic. News Channel 7's Tony Langfellow joins us live in the studio to explain, Tony, what seems to be their biggest issue?
Yeah, guys, the biggest problem movie theaters have been facing is many films are being released to streaming services the same day that theaters get them. But the Cosmo Theater says things are slowly starting to change.
Well, it's been getting better. We opened back up in September, and it was really slow.
2020 will forever be known as the year of COVID. It's also going to be known for hurting many businesses, especially the movie theater business. And Merrill's Finest Theater is no exception.
It's been hard for us. The staff is extremely limited. We've kept the majority of our staff, but on limited hours.
Owner Trevor Zonkowski says as the pandemic hit and theaters closed, people formed new habits of streaming movies at home.
Some movies you just need to see on a big screen.
And now that theaters are open again, there's still some films being released to both platforms.
Obviously, it's good for the studios to be able to make that money and keep going, but for the theater, it was really, really hard on us.
A few months back, the Cosmo saw things getting better, with blockbuster movies coming out, but then saw a lull. And now they're slowly creeping back up as more hit movies are being released to the big screen.
Now, finally, movies are coming out that aren't being streamed, so that helps us a lot also, so people aren't sitting at home watching it. They come to the theaters and watch it.
As people are becoming more comfortable with going to the movies, Zonkowski says they're lucky to get 25 people in a theater, which would have been a bad night before the pandemic.
Anything is better than what it was, so everything helps.
Now, he expects to see even more people come back to the theater during the summer as more hit movies come out.
High temperature today, 91 in Wausau. Today was the third consecutive day that temperatures have been in the 90s. And if you want to include Sunday, it was close. We'd have 5 or almost 6 days in a row at 90 or above. La Crosse set a record today at 97, 95 in Eau Claire, 88 in Point, and 85 in Antigo. So in terms of 90-degree days, we averaged 7. We're already at 5. And this is the first time in quite a few years that we've had this many bunched together. You have to go back to like 2012, that famous July. We've seen this many days, upper 80s, close to 90 in a row. And it's not even Father's Day yet. We still have a ways to go this summer. Temperatures right now at this hour, a little after 10, still 81 in Wausau, 76 in Point, and 80 in Wisconsin Rapids. So hour by hour for tonight, few storms possible tomorrow morning early across the Northwoods, north of Highway 8. And then tomorrow afternoon, very similar to your Tuesday afternoon. Showers and storms are possible. A few could become strong, but severe weather is not expected. Now, if you need that drink of water, things are getting brown out there in certain locations. Things are getting crunchy. You have about 2, maybe 3 chances, and that could be it for the next 7 to 10 days. Details coming up.
Thanks, Mark. Governor Tony Evers says he'll probably veto it, but the Republican-controlled Wisconsin legislature has voted to eliminate a $300 a week federal bonus for unemployed people. The federal payment to help the unemployed during the coronavirus pandemic is scheduled to end in September. 25 other states have already approved ending it early, saying it has exacerbated worker shortage problems. Democrats say there are several factors fueling the worker shortage, many of which predate the pandemic.
Wisconsin Assembly Republicans also passed a bill that would make Wisconsin a Second Amendment sanctuary. The bill effectively clears gun owners from complying with federal regulations, leaving only state laws. The largest impact here would be that Wisconsin gun owners would be clear from complying with future federal gun laws. There's a lot of questions about if it's constitutional or not, but ultimately the governor says he's very unlikely to sign it.
Some state troopers would be equipped with body cameras under a vote by the Republican-controlled State Budget Committee. The Joint Finance Committee voted approving spending $700,000 once on those body cameras once. The governor wanted $700,000 annually. The committee approved that amount for 1 year.
The state Senate is giving the thumbs up to a bill that would prohibit police from using chokeholds except in life-threatening situations or to defend themselves. Critics say there should be no exception for officers to use chokeholds, even in self-defense, as the bill allows. But supporters say the exception is reasonable and that the bill would all but eliminate the use of chokeholds. The second bill would mandate that any municipality that decreases funding for police would receive an equal cut in aid from the state. Meat supplier JBS says it paid $11 million after a ransomware attack. The company says the attack shut down its beef processing operations last week. JBS says most facilities had come back online by the time it had been paid, but it decided to do so to ensure customers face no risk. JBS says it doesn't think any private data got out during that attack.
A cybersecurity company in Marshfield is encouraging people to consider getting cybersecurity insurance. That's because Burns Insurance says the cost doesn't always stop when ransom is paid.
First, you investigate how and who has been affected, and then notifying them, and then in many cases they have to have a credit report monitoring for a whole year for all those customers. That's expensive.
Burns Insurance says if your business or personal information is hacked, almost every time you're going to have to pay their ransom. This is because hackers are able to encrypt individuals' and companies' backup systems. Pfizer says the second phase of its COVID-19 vaccine clinical trial in young children will use a lower dose than phase 1.
Dr. James Conway with the UW Health says that's normal because Pfizer already did the same thing with the first phase for adults.
Early studies, when this first started, the company tested a smaller dose, a medium dose, and a high dose in adults, and they settled on sort of this medium dose. The way they've done this, and the way Moderna is also doing this, is trying to figure out, first of all, how small a dose can you get away with, and only once you figure that out, then you start doing the larger trials to make sure that it's safe and that it gives a larger group of kids that same immune response.
Dr. Conway says the data shows kids with robust immune systems get as much of an immune response with a lower dose as adults do with a larger one. Pfizer hopes the trial wraps up by September.
Wisconsin is at risk of losing over $2 billion in federal COVID relief money for K through 12 schools. That's because not enough new state money has been committed to qualify for the additional money. The federal COVID relief bill requires the state to spend $387 million more over 2 years for Wisconsin to keep the federal aid. A DNR warden's legacy will live on thanks to a renewed boat launch.
His family lobbied for the change, and today it was officially unveiled. Neil Lefebvre was a DNR game technician shot and killed in 1971 by a poacher. For years, a stone memorial marked the location where investigators discovered Lefebvre's truck. But in the fall of 2019, his daughter, who was just 2 years old at the time of her father's death, launched a campaign to honor him more formally. Today, that dream came true with the dedication of the Neil Lefebvre Swamico boat launch.
All the support that we receive from the village, from the Brown County, from residents, overall, it's just overwhelming.
Peg Lefebvre says her late husband would be honored and humbled by the ceremony.
Coming up on News Channel 7 at 10, President Joe Biden prepares for his first trip overseas, including a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
And Dale Ryman continues his one-on-one interview with former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who was in Wausau today. What does he think of that upcoming summit between Biden and Putin?